Hi, and welcome back to another WRSA interview. Today we'll be talking about nutrition, and today we have Dr. Scott Forbes with us. Hi, Dr. Forbes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Scott Forbes. I'm an associate professor at Brennan University in the Department of Physical Education Studies. I also have a certified sport nutrition certification through the International Society of Sport Nutrition. And I also have the IOC Sport Nutrition Diploma. So kind of a few higher level sport nutrition certifications, as well as my PhD was in sport nutrition. I've published quite a bit in the area of sport nutrition, studying various kind of nutritional interventions combined with exercise to enhance muscle performance in both younger and older populations. So I have that kind of mix as well. And yeah, basically I've been a coach with BYSA at one point, which was pretty cool and a great experience as well.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll just hop right into the questions. We'll start with, what is the best way to rehydrate, and how much fluid should athletes be drinking after a game or a practice?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Obviously, water is a great rehydration strategy. The amount that you should be rehydrating depends on how much you sweat. So typically, one strategy is to weigh yourself before and after a training session or a game, and to figure out how much you actually lose from sweat. And then you should be replacing about 125% of that or 150%. So the hotter the environment, you're obviously going to sweat a little bit more, so you're going to have to drink a little bit more. And it's also very individualized. So not everyone is a big time sweater. Some people sweat a little bit, some people sweat a lot. So you need to take that into consideration as well.
Awesome. And what are the effects of dehydration on exercise performance?
Yeah, so dehydration is bad for exercise performance, hence why things like water or other strategies like Gatorade are really effective for sport performance. And the reason why is because if you're losing sweat, you're losing plasma volume or blood volume, and that puts a strain on your cardiovascular system and makes it more difficult to thermoregulate. So in those situations, we know that if you lose more than 2% of your body weight, that it impairs your exercise performance. And then there's been some fairly recent research looking at the effects of dehydration on cognitive performance as well. So if you lose more than 2% of your body weight, it also influences the way your brain functions. And obviously, the way your brain functions is really important for sport performance. So they know that your ability to make decisions is impaired, or how fast your brain can process information. So like reaction time is impaired as well. So those are obviously two really important aspects for soccer performance, but any team sport or sport where you have to make a lot of decisions, a cognitive sport, dehydration can definitely impair that.
Okay. And what fuels do you use during intense exercise?
Yeah, so when you're exercising, you use up this molecule called ATP. Sounds pretty nerdy, but it's called adenosine triphosphate. And so you have to replenish that or replace that. And your body can do that through what's called metabolism. And basically it's breaking down food. And food can be separated into different macronutrients. So you can have proteins, fats, or carbohydrates. And so all three of those macronutrients can be used to replenish ATP. Typically during exercise, we don't use protein as a fuel source, or our body doesn't use it very well. So most sport nutritionists typically ignore that. The other two macronutrients are fats and carbohydrates. And it's your body's decision to use one of those or the other depends on how much is available, and also the intensity that you're exercising. So the higher intensity that you exercise at, the more carbohydrates you're going to use as a fuel. So again, team sports or soccer, for example, where you're doing lots of sprints, that's very high intensity. You're going to burn a lot of carbohydrates.
And should athletes be consuming carbohydrates within 30 minutes after their exercises?
Yeah, so there's always this kind of thought that there's this window after exercise where you have to eat. And it's also in the protein world, like this anabolic window that if you did a weight training session that you have to eat within 30 minutes of exercise, it's a bit of a myth. So not necessarily do you have to eat right after you exercise, but with regards to carbohydrates, if you're trying to recover your glycogen stores, so that's how we store carbohydrates, you want to recover those as quickly as possible. There's no downside to eating quickly after you're done exercising. From a protein standpoint, we know that that window of opportunity is much longer than 30 minutes. You can wait a couple hours after you exercise, and really it's dependent on when you ate your last meal. So if you ate a meal right before you exercised, you can actually wait 6 hours or even longer before you need to consume protein. So that anabolic window or that window right after you exercise is a bit of a myth, but again, there's no downside to consuming food immediately after exercise.
Yeah, and what kinds of nutritional strategies can we use to help our bodies repair after exercise?
Yeah, so repairing your body, probably the main macronutrient is protein. So you break down your body with training sessions, you need to rebuild it. And again, protein is probably the main macronutrient that's important for that rebuild phase. There's other things to help with muscle growth and rebuilding or repairing of tissues, and that's creatine. So creatine's a supplement that you can buy, but you can also get it from food sources as well. And probably the best is combining creatine with protein. You can actually recover a little bit faster. So a lot of my research involves creatine supplementation, so I had to mention that today. And it's one of the safest supplements that you can get. But yeah, protein's another macronutrient that's extremely important. So they suggest that you try to get 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So you need to know your body weight in kilograms per day. And if you do that, you're going to maximize, it's called muscle protein synthetic response. So the building of muscle and help with that recovery process.
Awesome. And why is sleep important and how can it affect exercise performance?
Yeah, sleep is probably one of the most underrated tools in the world of sport performance. It's the easiest thing you could possibly do. It's cheap, it's free, and there's more and more data to show that it can clearly enhance exercise performance. So there was a study in basketball players where they did a sleep extension study. So at the start of the study, they're sleeping about 6.5 hours a night. At the end of the study, they're sleeping almost 8.5 hours a night. Once they were sleeping longer, their reaction time improved, their sprinting ability improved, and their shooting accuracy also improved. So if I was a coach, I'd be really excited if all those things improved in an athlete, and they did that just by sleeping a little bit longer. We also know that if you get less than 8 hours of night of sleep, then you're at a 1.7 times greater risk of injury. So sleep is good to enhance, longer sleep enhances exercise performance, and shorter sleep impairs exercise performance or increases your risk for injury. So sleep is extremely important. From a nutritional standpoint, probably consuming protein just before sleep can help with the recovery process. So a lot of the recovery process occurs when you are sleeping. So there's been a few studies now to suggest that consuming protein, it takes a fairly large amount, about 40 grams, 1 to 2 hours before you sleep, and that can help training adaptation. So you can get, again, bigger and stronger muscles if you consume protein before sleep. But sleep is extremely important. Never forget that, even though a lot of university-aged athletes definitely try to avoid sleep.
Yeah, I get that. That's really all the questions that I have for you today. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, so I think everyone's looking for this magic bullet or special supplement that can enhance exercise performance. But I always bring back or tell athletes or tell individuals that to focus on 3 things, and I call them sledgehammers. Just eat real food is important, so avoid processed food. The next is get sufficient sleep. We know that sleep is really important, and I mentioned that. And then the other one is just exercise regularly. So those are the most important things. And I think if you do those 3 things, that you're basically 90% of the way there. I hate to say this, but the other 10% might be like coaches or sports psychology. I don't know, periodization or training at the right intensities or nutrient timing. Those will take you the other 10%. So they're also important. But hitting those sledgehammers are the main thing. So just eating real food, exercising regularly, and what else I say, and sufficient sleep. So those are the main ones. So I know there's probably a few coaches that are going to be listening to this and they think they're the most important thing, but I don't think they are. Sports psychologists, same thing. They're going to think that they're making the athlete as great as they possibly are. But I think those 3 sledgehammers are something that we can't get distracted from and are super important.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming